Hi, I am Steve Gathercole and welcome to another of my time-lapse pyrography videos. This time, a red-tailed hawk. Hope you enjoy the video. Okay, as usual, I'm starting off with the eye and I'm using the small spear shader on my wire tip burner. As usually, a good idea to get the eye done first and see if the rest of the artwork's going to look right or not. As you can see now, I've just put in the fine detail around the eye. It's a low heat I'm using now on my actual burner, and I tend to go back and forth over the same area to try and get the tones up to value. Obviously, it's not quite so easy to see with the time lapse, but there are times when I go back and forth over the same area quite a few times just to bring the colour up a bit, the tone. And moving on to the mouth area, I'm having to turn the heat up just a little bit here because of the dark areas of the beak itself. But I find that it's definitely a lot better to go in with several light layers than trying to burn too quickly with a high heat. You just have to be a little bit more patient. Feathers I'm working on at the moment are the finer feathers around the head. I'm going to do like a short tutorial video that shows how what techniques I use for the different types of feather. Either the small feathers around the top of the head, the longer fur-like feathers around underneath the beak and the chest, and then the larger feathers you'll see that we eventually come to on the back. Here I'm just doing the inside of the mouth area. As you can see, I keep flitting back and forth over different parts of the artwork. It's as I said, it takes a lot of patience. Sometimes it can get a bit monotonous in one area, so I'll just move to another area that's a bit more interesting and then come back again. And also, as you start to add darker areas, you then realise that some of the areas that you previously did are a little bit too light, so you need to go back over those areas to darken them a bit. That's why I think it's a good idea really to look at your reference and try and get a few of the really dark areas in first. That then give you an idea of how dark the other areas need to go, if you see what I mean. And even then, right at the very end, I usually end up going back over those areas that I previously thought were quite dark and then turn out to be not as dark as I thought. This part of the wing now is in its back is in a bit more shade, so I'm having to go a little bit darker with the burns, and it just takes a bit longer, so I'm going back and forth over the same area. I'm not a fan of the idea of just quickly shading in a big area with a flat part of the shader. I tend to shade by going back and forth over the same area with small strokes. And if I need to go dark, I'll just go over that same area with a bit more strokes. That, to me, that seems to add a bit more depth to the texture of the fur or hair or feathers, depending on what you're working on. I'm not saying that's the right way to do things. It's just the technique that I've picked up as I've started to get into pyrography a bit. And I'm sure there are plenty of professional pyrographers out there who will tell you completely different, but so this is just the way I tend to do it. You can see this little burner I'm using. It's just a Chinese burner off of eBay that I'm only using the one tip. It actually works really well. The pen's not getting too hot. You can see I'm holding it right near the end, and it's a fraction of the cost of the expensive burners. I'm not sure how long it will last, but it seems to be doing me fine at the moment. We're starting to get into some of the bigger areas, bigger feather areas now, where the feathers get a bit larger and more defined. And I tend to start at the bottom of the feather, where there'll always be a little shadow because of the overlapping feathers, and then work out towards the end of the feather with lighter strokes. And if I'm not quite sure where the feather is going to be, what it's going to look like, I tend to do the outline first, as you can see here, with small strokes. Never draw the outline of the feather with a straight line, it won't look right, so I tend to use little tiny strokes to draw the outline first, and then go back in and fill the area of the feathers I'm doing here with these larger feathers now. You see I've done the outside edges, and then I'm going back in and filling in the body of the feather, always making sure that the base of the feather is a bit darker than the tip of the feather. It gives you that sort of 3D look, and you would naturally have shadow casting from the feathers above. Another technique I find is quite useful. If you're having to burn a dark area, as we are now, these feathers are getting a bit darker. I'll turn the heat up, but just quickly move the pen instead, so that it doesn't get a chance to burn too dark. Then if I do need to go dark, I can just slow the movement of the pen down. It does take a bit of practice, but it does save having to keep readjusting the temperature of the pen. So if I have the pen quite hot, I will move the tip a bit quicker. You do have to be careful you don't end up with what they call initial burn spot, or as soon as you touch the wood, you get a little burn area that looks like a dot or a spot. So I find that you do have to be a bit careful doing that, but it's just my laziness not being bothered to keep going back and forth changing the temperature on the control. Now it's quite dark down this part of the wing. We're in a bit of shadow here now. The light is basically on the top of his head and part of his back. I'll now decide to flick over to the other wing now on the other side, and I'll show this technique when I do a little tutorial for feathers as well. Here I just tend to leave a small unburnt area to give me the outline of the feather. And you see what I mean? So I leave a very, very small area and then fill in the rest of it. It tends to give you an edge that looks like the edge of a feather. Right, now we go on a bit of the background. I thought, well, might as well try and add a bit of background. There's quite a large blank area, so I'll put some trees in the background. And this is just using several small circular motions to try and simulate the leaves of a tree. It's more like an impressionist type drawing really, rather than a very detailed drawing, because at the end of the day they are in the distance. I just thought to give it a bit more interest if I did some trees in the background and gave you a bit more of a different perspective on the burning itself. And here again I will go back and forth over various areas to get a bit more depth in the trees. But sometimes I'm using a little circular motion, and sometimes like a figure of 8 type motion with the tip of the actual spear shader, just a very pointed tip. And again, if I go quickly, I can get a lighter burn than if I slow down with the pen, and it tends to give me that bit more depth I'm looking for. You can't see very well, but I've actually put a flat shader in here just to do a few little clouds, and I've gone back to the here to do the borders. I'm using a ball tip on quite a high setting, and you can actually see the smoke coming from the board. But that tends to help me with getting a nice even burn. You can see this slightly glowing red now. Oh, this looks really quick here, doesn't it? It took me ages doing this border. It's quite surprising how slightly even done the border is. And there we are, the finished product. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again for the next one. Bye.